A young man holding a flickering candle stands in front of a blank wall, his face hidden in the shadows. Behind him, a faint neon light casts an eerie glow on the pale yellow walls around him. He takes a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. "Hello," he whispers, his voice barely audible above the sound of his ragged breathing. "If anyone can hear me, I need help." He takes another shaky step forward, his footsteps echoing in a long, lingering sound that seems to hang in the void around him. He looks up at the ceiling, which is low and adorned with what appears to be a never-ending series of identical square panels. Each one is painted a sickly shade of yellow and seems to absorb the meager light from the single flickering bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. Turning back to the wall, he runs his hand along its cold, damp surface. "This isn't where I was a moment ago," he says, his voice cracking with fear. "Where am I?" As his eyes adjust to the gloom, he notices that the floor is covered with thick, damp carpets that look as if they haven't been dried in years. The air is heavy and stale, and he can feel the dampness seeping through his clothes. Each step he takes sends a shiver down his spine, not from the cold, but from the unsettling feeling that he is being watched. He begins to walk down the corridor, his footsteps the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. But as he turns around to check behind him, he sees that the corridor has repeated itself in the same way, but from a different angle. It gives him a different feeling. Sometimes it's bitter cold. Sometimes the air is heavy and musty. At other times, he can hear the faint sound of a child's crying that seems to come from behind the walls themselves. But whatever sound he hears, it always seems to fade away into a distant, unintelligible murmur. As he continues walking, the sound of his own footsteps growing louder in his ears, the camera suddenly shakes violently, almost falling from his grasp. He steadies it, turning it towards the distant end of the corridor where a long shadow appears to be sweeping across the gloom. It moves quickly, almost as if something is running towards him. He stops, panting, and turns the camera toward the void, but there's nothing there. Only a low hum coming from behind the walls. He tries to run, but the corridor seems to stretch on forever. He can feel the presence behind him, though, getting closer, its footsteps heavy and measured. Just as he thinks he might actually outrun it, he notices a rusty iron door half open. In the flickering light, he can just make out the squiggly script on the wall beside it that reads, "You are not alone." He pushes the door open slowly and steps inside. The room is smaller than the corridors he's been wandering through and almost completely dark. The door behind him shuts with a heavy thud, plunging him into darkness. He can hear the footsteps outside the door getting closer, pounding against the metal as if whoever or whatever is on the other side is trying to break in. "Hello," he whispers, his voice echoing in the small space. "Can anyone hear me?" But there is no reply except the sound of his own breathing and the pounding on the door. The camera shakes more, the light from the candle illuminating the wild fear in his eyes. The pounding on the door becomes more frantic, as if whoever is out there knows he's inside. Then, with a final deafening crash, the door is broken open and the light from the corridor floods in. The young man screams, dropping the camera as he tries to run for the now open door. But it's too late. A tall, shadowy figure silhouetted against the light reaches out and grabs him by the collar, pulling him back. He struggles, but it's no use. The figure is too strong. It drags him towards the flickering candle, its face still hidden in the shadows. The camera lies on the ground, its lens cracked, the image frozen on the pale yellow wall behind the struggling young man. The figure leans closer, its hot breath on his neck. "You are not alone," it whispers, its voice a raspy growl. And then it strikes. The screen goes black, the image of the struggle continuing to burn into the viewer's eyes. The sound of the young man's screams and the figure's heavy laughter echo in the darkness. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stops. There is only silence, broken by the sound of ragged breathing. The camera lies on the ground, forgotten. The faint glow of the candle flame is the only light in the otherwise pitch-black room. The smell of dampness and decay hangs heavy in the air, and somewhere in the darkness, a low, guttural voice whispers, "You are not alone.